What's good, YouTube? Portrait mode has really come a long way since it started off on the Galaxy Note 8, and it's turned into a very refined and integral part of computational photography. In this video, we'll be taking a look at some of the front runners in the smartphone camera market, the iPhone 12 and the Samsung Galaxy S21, both flagship devices with their respective companies, and both offer some very impressive results with portrait mode. This video will go into just how portrait mode is operated on each of these two phones. We'll take a look at some of the camera specs that you have running on each of these devices. And then next, it'll go over the controls of portrait mode on each of the phones. And finally, we'll go into some of the results and actual photos from both the Samsung Galaxy S21 and the iPhone 12, with captures straight from the phone without any kind of post-production. If you like this kind of content, don't forget to subscribe, leave a message down below, and thanks for watching. So let's check out some of the specs on these flagship devices. The biggest difference between the camera setup on the S21 versus the iPhone is, of course, the camera module on the S21 features three separate lenses. You have one 12-megapixel ultra-wide camera, another 12-megapixel standard shooter camera, and a 64-megapixel telephoto camera. With the iPhone 12, you only have two camera lenses, both 12 megapixels for ultra-wide and wide shots. Both camera systems offer their own branding of image stabilization and provide excellent steady shots, as you can expect from flagship devices like these. So with the specs out of the way, let's get right into the portrait mode of these individual shooters. So starting off with the S21, what you'll notice right off the bat is that portrait mode isn't actually available by default on the camera app on your S21. You actually have to access it through the More menu, which is somewhat baffling considering one of the major reasons why smartphone flagships like the S21 have as much camera technology as they do is because of the demand and popularity of portrait mode. So what you want to do is swipe all the way right to the More menu and then select Portrait Mode, and you'll be able to capture a photo using the portrait functions on the S21. Alternatively, you can drag Portrait Mode down to the scroller at the bottom of the camera app and make it available by default every time you open up the camera. Once you have it loaded up, the Portrait Mode will detect whether or not your object that you want to isolate is the correct distance away from your camera. If it is, then you'll notice a slider will appear at the bottom of the screen, and you can use this slider to adjust the amount of blurriness that you see on the background of your isolated object. Overall, a pretty streamlined interface for getting pretty good bokeh out of your objects and your captures. And it's definitely improved in terms of the object detection than the portrait modes of the Samsung Galaxies from a few generations ago. So moving on to the iPhone now, you'll notice that unlike the S21, you have the access to portrait mode right off the bat when you launch the camera app. Simply scroll through the modes at the bottom until you hit portrait mode. Here you'll be able to isolate your subject, and the iPhone will automatically blur the background for you. If you're looking to adjust the level of blurriness, what you want to do is adjust the depth slider. To access the depth slider on your iPhone in portrait mode, what you want to do is swipe up to access the photo settings. The depth slider is located at the right of the settings. Here you can slide it left or right to adjust the level of blurriness of your background on your isolated subject. So there you have it, everyone. These are the two modes that you have available to you on the S21 and the iPhone. As far as comparisons go, I found that the S21 was able to isolate the subject much more quickly than the iPhone, and the edging around the subject allowed for a much smoother blur transition that was much more reminiscent of bokeh that you get from DSLR. The iPhone's portrait mode is still excellent though, as it was able to successfully isolate my subject and create a somewhat pleasing blurred background effect. That being said, however, I did find that the level of adjustment and intensity of the blur was much more pronounced on the Galaxy S21. As you move the intensity slider up and down on the S21, you can obviously see that the background gets quite blurred out, whereas it's still visible on the iPhone, even at maximum intensity or depth. And while this might not be all too realistic in terms of how real bokeh behaves, if you're looking for a blurred background, the S21 might be the best choice for you, just in terms of subject isolation and edging around your background. So what do you think? Does the iPhone offer better bokeh than the S21? Which phone has a better interface for portrait mode? And which phone offers better captures for isolated subjects? Leave a message down below. Don't forget to subscribe, and thanks for watching.